Hello, it's Thursday, December 8 in Altoona, Iowa. It's about noon. On Friday, day before yesterday, I drove to Grinnell, Iowa to attend a farmers union forum. The keynote speaker was a woman from Washington, D.C. who presented a pretty detailed description of how badly farmers have been treated by virtue of U.S. trade policies from the time of passage of NAFTA onward. Her speech was very educational. When she finished at 3 o'clock, 6 presidential candidates talked at about 30 minutes each. Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota started. She was very comfortable. She's from a neighboring state with many farmers. And in fact, the year before, she had been the keynote speaker at this exact gathering. The second speaker was Congressman Delaney from Maryland. And he surprised the audience by explaining that the number one industry in Maryland is agriculture. And the district he represented had more farmers than any other district in Maryland. The third speaker was Steyer. He surprised the audience by explaining that he and his wife raise pigs, cattle, and I believe horses, and have done so for more than 15 years. He also quoted them the price of corn and was knowledgeable off the top of his head about the cost of raising corn. The fourth speaker was Senator Buttigieg, who had essentially no farm connection at all, which he made no bones about. I'll return to that in a minute. The fifth speaker was Mayor Pete Buttigieg of South Bend, Indiana. He spoke for the shortest amount of time, and he had the least audience chemistry. Mayor Pete tends to give succinct answers, which is wonderful, and I've seen enough of his questions and answers to know that his answers often are not applauded when he finishes, nor is he expecting any applause. And he didn't get any applause from these farmers for almost all of his questions. He only spoke for 20 or 21 minutes of his allotted 30 minutes. The sixth and final speaker was Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, who pointed out that Vermont is full of small family farms and that he's done work for decades on their behalf. Returning to Senator Booker, because there were 3 hours of speeches, I did not have enough battery power to record them all on my normal vlogging camera. So I alternated speakers between this iPhone Pro Max that I just bought and my normal vlogging camera. He was speaker number 4, so that called for an iPhone recording. I was setting it up as he began to speak, and frankly, his opening remarks, which lasted up to 5 minutes but no more, did not seem appropriate to the farm gathering. It seemed to be a repeat of his stump speech that I had heard the day before in Des Moines. However, I got my iPhone going, and although I missed a couple of minutes of his 5-minute opening remarks, I was able to get the rest of his questions and answers. To my surprise, he won over the audience wholeheartedly. And by the time he finished speaking, they gave him a standing ovation. He was the only candidate to that point to get a standing ovation. Mayor Pete did not get a standing ovation. Senator Sanders did, but Senator Sanders had a large number of supporters in the room. This is a long way of saying I recommend you listen to Senator Booker's questions and answers from the farm gathering. They show an ability to connect with an audience which I had not imagined was present. So I hope you enjoy the video.
Overlooked or cast aside. I moved to the inner city of Newark, New Jersey, but more than anything, you all, this organization, Farmers Union, partnering with me has helped me to be a champion for rural areas, and I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
So according to the USDA, we know that farm income has dropped nearly 50% from our recent highs. And then the median farmer income, or the median farmer lost money again last year. And that means that farmers were tightening their belts, meeting with landlords, lenders, and their input suppliers. But the vast majority are losing equity on their farm, and they're burning through capital. They're putting off investments, and they're delaying bringing the next generation back to the farm. What should we be doing to address this farm income crisis?
So we know that the consumer share, the consumer dollar, the farmer's share of the consumer dollar has dropped dramatically in the last decade or two. And for many of our commodities, the things that we're buying in supermarkets in New Jersey that come from the Midwest, the farmer's share of that dollar being spent in my state has gone down 40–50%. We are having independent family farmers being run out of business. The very culture and heritage of our country, the original entrepreneurs in America, they're being run out of business because of the first thing that we've championed together, that you all have informed and endorsed, was my bill, which was a groundbreaking bill to put a stop on corporate consolidation in the food and agriculture sector. And so my moratorium bill is something we need to make sure becomes law of this nation, because when I sat with farmers union folks, took me, before I was a presidential candidate, took me through the Midwest, sitting at tables with Republican and Democratic farmers, the stories were outrageous. The cost of the source products, a few companies buying up every single one, cost of chemicals, seeds going way up, squeeze from the bottom, squeeze from the top, because we're a nation that doesn't seem to even honor the Packard Stockyards Act. And so now people have one person to sell their goods to. One of the farmers I remember on this trip was almost afraid to talk to me about these issues, afraid that they would get cut off. You can't have capitalism without competition. What we have right now in the farm sector is not capitalism, not free market capitalism. And farmers are being denied the ability to compete because they're getting squeezed from the top and the bottom. So first and foremost, enough is enough. If these trends continue, we are going to become a country that's gone from independent family farmers to multinational corporations that are engaging in the kind of practices that are so contrary to the stewards that farmers are. It's going to destroy our soil, destroy our environment, because they don't care. When these big groups come in, like Smithfields and others, with their CAFOs and more, they're doing things to destroy our ecology and our system and our way of life of farmers. Number two is we've got to start creating new streams of income for farmers. This is a country, everybody here should be a little angry that we've been using our taxpayer dollars to give money to extractive industries like oil companies, so they pay no taxes. The farmers you just talked about, family farmers that I know, they pay taxes. Chevron pays a net zero tax. In fact, they pay negative tax because we give them so much tax dollars to incentivize them to do things that are hurting our economy. We need to pay farmers and incentivize them. That's why my plan calls for $100 billion for farmers to do the kind of practices that farmers know work. Cover crops, no-till farming, things that preserve habitat, preserve the gold in America now, which is not that ore, the gold is our soil, that protect our waters. And so if you read my plan on corybooker.com/rural America, you're going to see a very detailed plan to make sure that farmers have the resources they need to thrive in our economy, but more than that, that they're going to be the leaders in America that show us a way out of the problem of the climate crisis that we have. We got to be clear right now that when we lose markets, it's not something you can flip a switch and turn back. This president is driving by global buyers. Remember, 95% of we're a consumer-based economy. 95% of consumers are outside of our country. And our farmers, I believe, fair playing field, will compete and win globally. But this is what this president has done. I'm not saying we shouldn't be taking on China, we should. But the way he took on China, though, is as if I played football in the Pac-10, now Pac-12, and it'd be like me when we go play Notre Dame saying to my offense, you gotta stay on the sidelines. I'm gonna go take Notre Dame on alone. Because what he did is he turned his back on all of our allies and is trying to take China on in a trade war when we have common cause with the EU, common cause with Canada. But you know what we're doing while we're putting tariffs on China? He turned around and put tariffs on our allies as well. We are using a national security waiver to put tariffs on Canada. Now, I know some of you in this room might feel for me because I find Trudeau very menacing. He's got that beautiful hair. I'm jealous. But Canada is not a national security threat. So first and foremost, we need to do the opposite of what this president is doing, because he's saying his policy is America first. What it really is the policy of America alone, weakening our ability to take on people like China. And while he's doing that, let me just tell you the environmental cost, because many of you know this already. Those markets that used to buy their soybeans from us, you know where they're buying them from now? Places like Brazil. You know what Brazil's doing to create the land? Tearing down rainforests. And so I'm on the foreign relations committee. I'm meeting with foreign leaders, and the conversations I have, they look at me, and I'm not exaggerating, this isn't melodrama. I see fear, worry, anxiety about America's retreat from the world, because they know we're an indispensable partner. And so I will be the leader that repairs our relationships, strengthens our alliances, makes our word, again, our bond as a nation, but focuses on putting farmers at the center, farmers and our environment, which are congruent, at the center of every trade deal I do, every international arrangement. Because at the end of the day, what's going to help our community here in rural America is to have the economic might and the willingness to take on the economic fight to make sure that the people who are producing the world's food are actually winning and not doing what they're doing right now, which is falling behind. Now is the local food movement that's growing in our country. And there are some USDA programs, and we outline these in my plan. There are USDA programs that are funding things that are working, funding pilot projects that are working, but we're lacking the resources and the investment to bring these to scale like we should. And so my plan calls for a massive reinvestment in the USDA programs that are showing evidence-based models that really do help to empower that movement. And let me be very clear, as a guy who knows this pain, again, I always tell people try to slice and divide our country, geography, race, party. We are a people that have tremendous common cause. And by the way, we have common pain too, and my goal is to turn that common pain into common purpose. And so let me tell you right now, I was a guy that lived in a food desert and knows the challenge that many Americans across this country who live in places without access to healthy food. There are rural areas living adjacent to farmland that have Dollar Generals taking over, okay? But not access to fresh fruits and vegetables. You know the irony of living a stone's throw from a farm and not having easy access to fresh fruits and vegetables? That not only hurts our health as a society, but it also hurts our economy. We need to start strengthening those links between the producers of the food and the consumer of the food, and not letting these corporate powers that are undermining the ability for both sides to thrive and succeed together. This has been a mission for me like you would not believe. And let me get this off my chest, because this is another bill you all helped me with. That there are folks in the Democratic Party that didn't support this. These checkoff programs that my independent family farmers are paying into, that are then controlled, the boards are being controlled by these multinational corporations that use those dollars to push practices that hurt these local farm movements, these farm table movements, these locally grown movements. This has got to stop. There's no accountability for those resources. This is going to be a battle in our country. You all know this. It affects every element of our society. Who is going to have a say? The people or the larger conglomerations that are undermining free markets, entrepreneurialism, independent family farmers, and more? Because we're losing right now. We see a Supreme Court that's taking away individual power and favoring corporate power. Remember, we had something called Citizens United that literally said corporations are people now. Well, that's ridiculous. You can't marry a corporation.
That's right.
These are all things that are shifting in our society to give large conglomerations. Think about what new business starts. We have a rural plan for businesses, entrepreneurs to start and thrive, because I want to see those farm and table restaurants get access to capital and more. Well, you know why? New business starts are going down in this country. And so I just feel this strong drive, back to the point of this question, to do the things that are going to really make a difference for our country. In a country right now where we are seeing our health and well-being. Again, to show you common pain, common purpose, is a guy in South Central Los Angeles that says something. He goes, in South Central, we got drive-bys and drive-throughs. And the drive-throughs are killing more people than the drive-bys. We must have a food movement in this country that takes us back to our heritage, where people have access to fresh and healthy foods that are being produced by farmers like the ones represented in this room.
on that healthy theme, there's a great debate concerning changing the healthcare system in this country, and I can, because their healthcare is more expensive than everybody else's. They frequently have pre-existing conditions that make them either ineligible or just unaffordable. And so there's a two-part question. One is, what do we do to transform the healthcare system and make it more affordable for farmers, but also tie in some of the environmental contamination this questioner wants you to do that is happening as a result of polluted drinking water and things of that nature that also impacts our health.
It is a big question. I'm glad you ended with that, tying this in, because we think of healthcare often just as a healthcare system, don't understand that our health and our well-being comes from our food, comes from the toxins in our environment, comes from our drinking water, quality of our air. All of these things raise our mortality or illness rates that we don't talk about. We can even go further. The toxic chemicals, we have chemical companies controlling our laws that they put out the fire retardants that are on our fabrics, and they never test them. They're innocent until proven guilty. And so let me just say that a lot of the debate around our healthcare system is just hogwash. And I say that as a guy who's never washed a hog. But let's just be clear right now. We have a healthcare system that is fundamentally broken and is benefiting, again, certain people and excluding others. We pay more than any country on the planet for our healthcare. Close to $1 out of every $5 in our economy is being spent on healthcare. And we have the worst results of any industrialized nation. We cannot afford to keep going, because as we see rises in cancer rates, rises in Alzheimer's rates, if we don't change something, we are going to price ourselves out of healthcare and collapse our economy. There's an urgent need to do something about it. Now look, I'm of the camp very simply. I believe we should have a single payer system. It would make a lot of things more simple, and I'm going to fight for that. But I'm also one of these very candid elected leaders, because I'm a senator now, that if you can't get all the senators on a debate stage to agree on things like Medicare for all that I believe in, you're not going to then go to the Senate and get Democrats who are more conservative to agree on it as well. And so this debate we've been having on the Democratic debate stages makes a lot of people at home feel queasy, because nobody's really speaking to their pain right now, which is, okay, I hear your philosophical or your ideological or your moral positions on this issue, but I don't hear how you're actually going to get real things done. Because the last Democratic president we had, his slogan was, yes, we can. The operative word is we. We're going to make a difference on this by which president can build the best coalitions to make your lives better. And to make a coalition, that means you need to get all the Democrats together and pick up other people as well. And so, as a guy, the only guy in this race that lives in a very vulnerable community, where I see the pain on a regular basis of people who can't afford their prescription drugs, or folks who get their primary care in hospital emergency rooms, we have to show progress, and I will never ever sacrifice progress on the altar of ideological purity on these issues. I will build the coalitions to do the common sense things to drive down your healthcare costs, starting with taking on prescription drug companies, because it is morally wrong that our tax dollars have been used to develop drugs, that then the pharmaceutical companies jack up prices and charge us many times more in our country than they're selling it in other countries. Think about this. We help design and develop the drugs, and then they give Russians, I'm not exaggerating, they charge them a fraction of the cost for the same drug in our country. Enough. Under my leadership, we are going to take away patents from companies that do that and let generics come in, and we're going to stop companies from continuing to raise the prices of drugs higher than inflation. This has to be stopped. We'll use the power of Medicare to drive down costs. We will make this system that is morally corrupted, people profiteering off of our pain, end. And then we'll do other things that are just common sense that I know we can do in the early days of my administration. Expanding Medicare, lowering eligibility costs, creating a public option. They're the coalitions that we can build to get those things done, to move the ball further to the end zone for me, which is ultimately every American, as a matter of a right, a moral right, having access to healthcare. But the last part of that question, which I just really quickly want to say, because I don't think enough people are talking about it. I founded the Environmental Justice Caucus in the United States Senate because not enough people are talking about this. I pushed the biggest premier bill on environmental justice because not enough people are doing things about this. Millions of Americans don't have access to clean drinking water, including right here in Iowa. In fact, people talk about Flint, Michigan. I don't know if you all knew this, but there are more than 3,000 jurisdictions, 3,000, where children have more than twice the blood lead levels of Flint, Michigan, because we have a clean water problem. We have a clean air problem. The number one reason why our kids are missing school now, health reason, is asthma. We wouldn't have such high expensive healthcare costs if we attacked these environmental toxins. If I am your president, you can see it as a pillar of my climate plan is environmental justice. There's no greater champion of these issues already in the United States Senate. The best way to know what somebody's going to do in the future is what the heck have they been doing now and in the past, and you will see me go into battle to make sure our air, water is not only clean, but it's an American birthright that you should have access to environments without these toxins we have in them.
Talking about, but the questioner would like you to drill down more deeply into how you think farmers can benefit economically by the kinds of practices that you think make sense to deal with this existential threat.
So we have a saying in my community, which is, it shouldn't be about me without me. In other words, if you're not in the room making policy, if you're not at the table, as one of my friends used to joke with me, if you don't have a seat at the table, then you're going to be on the menu. and dear God, we Democrats don't have clean hands on this. Letting people at the table when we're shaping policy, Waters of the USA, I can talk about a lot of things that we've done in ways that have not included farmers who have the wisdom and the insights and the values that the rest of America has. There are practices going on right now in Iowa that the rest of the country can learn from about soil preservation, about pulling carbon out of the air, about protecting waters and being stewards of that. I know this not only because I've read about it, but I've visited with those farmers. And so I'm a guy that, again, I was the chief executive officer of New Jersey's largest city. And I learned that I don't have all the answers. And that when you are trying to make decisions and craft policy, find out what's working and who's being directly affected by it and honor their wisdom. You don't want to need a bunch of management consultants from some big city in the East to be designing your policy that's affecting farmers in the Midwest. And so we have a very detailed climate plan about major streams of revenue. Because I'm sorry, if it doesn't make economic sense, then it's not going to happen. And we've been wasting money on subsidizing corporations for so long because they have a seat at the table through their lobbyists. They have a seat, they're crafting policy. Enough of that. It's why in this campaign, I'm not taking corporate PAC money, I'm not taking federal lobbyist money, I'm taking money from, my main stream of income is Americans. So if you go to my website to read my farm plan, please drop $1 or $2 while you're there as well. but let me say this. The Farmers Union took me on a rural farm tour. And it was amazing. We met with Republican farmers because I think the Democratic Party, we make a mistake if we vilify the 60 million Americans that voted for Donald Trump. Come on. We need to be the party that understands this moral moment is not about simply beating Republicans. I want to send Mitch McConnell to the back bench. I want to beat Donald Trump, yes. But the message of this party shouldn't be simply defeating Republicans. It should be about uniting Americans again. We will not win this election if we talk always about what we're against and don't start talking always about what we are for. And what we're for has got to be each other. Because the folks overseas are trying to divide us up against ourselves. And so the Farmers Union loved them, took me out on a farm tour, and purposely went to have me sit down with Republicans. And I love one of our tours. We stopped at this man's house, he took me out, showed me his cows and his pigs, and I want to confess to everybody here, I hope this doesn't prejudice you in any way, but I'm a vegetarian. and yet, one person's applauding. but they took me out, thank you, sir. He took me cows, he was very stiff to me, very stiff, and I just felt a little tension, and so I tried to loosen him up with my, I don't know if you all know this, but I am Corey and corny, one letter separates us. So I use all my corny jokes from this guy. I said, sir, these cows of yours are utterly amazing, sir. I milked every joke I had for everything that I could get. And I'm sorry, it's painful. You're all about to eat too. And by the end, he was smiling and stuff. We sat around the table, and I loved it. We agreed on so many things: the ag moratorium on corporate mergers, the doing things like the checkoff. These guys were just common sense folk. By the end, he wanted me to take pictures and selfies with his families. I get back in the car, and the incredible man that was driving me around said, "I need to tell you something. That guy didn't want you in his house originally." And when I asked him why, he goes, "Well, we're a Christian family. We can't have somebody like him in our house." Now, hold on, don't disrespect him. We are so in our silos in America. And our silos often tell us to hate each other. And they take often the dumbest thing we've said and use that as evidence to the totality of our being. So he must have watched something about me that some of the websites that are on the other side of the aisle. But yet we found common cause. There's this great writer, her name is Brene Brown. And she says, you can't hate up close, so pull people in. Me, a Republican from the Midwest, and a Democrat from Newark, New Jersey, sat down at a table and had a conversation and found fierce common cause. If we are going to solve these problems like climate change, we will never get there by vilifying entire sectors of our economy, by people on either side of the aisle. We've got to find more leaders that are willing to do the work of reaching out, pulling people in, sitting at a common table, and reestablishing that common cause. Our very existence on this planet depends upon doing that. And I believe at the core of my being, after working with the Farmers Union, that farmers will be the salvation of this country's environmental problems. Because folks that didn't look like me, many who didn't pray like me, were willing to stand up and fight for me. Even by the house I moved into to grow up in Harrington Park, New Jersey, it's a suburban, wealthy suburb. We were the first black family to move in, and we bought our house because real estate agents were refusing to sell to black families. So a bunch of white folks in that community banded together, and every time my parents were told the house was sold, they would send a white couple behind them to pretend they were home buyers. Literally, the contract we got to sign and to buy my home was, all that process was done by a white couple pretending to be us. I am literally sitting here right now because Americans stood up for Americans regardless of race, geography, whatever. We have a core value in this country. It's represented in our faith traditions. It's represented in our history of something simple, that patriotism is love of country. And you cannot love your country unless you love your fellow countrymen and women. And love is not sentimentality. It's not a mushy feeling. Love is sacrifice and service. Love is a very simple statement. Love is knowing that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And we got a lot of injustice in this country.
That's right.
You'll drive around your communities, you see it. We're in a country that has this discord now between the things we say and the things we do. We say that we're the home of the brave, but our bravest, when they come home, are veterans, they're disproportionately homeless. We talk about a criminal justice system. Well, where's the justice in having a system that now treats you better if you're rich and guilty than if you're poor and innocent?
That's right.
We are a nation that says we believe in equality under the law, but you know what we're doing? We're locking people up just because of their mental illness or their addiction. I just want to say I'm running in this election not just because I know we have strong policy plans. This election is not just about the head, it's about the heart, it's about the gut, it's about the spirit of America. I'm running to bring this country together, to show again that the lines that divide us are not nearly as strong as the ties that bind us. I'm going because in my gut I know we are a greater nation when leaders stand up and put more indivisible back into our one nation under God. And if I had my way, those values that got me to this very stage of American, standing up for American, that in this tough time when people are trying to slice and divide us and demean and degrade us, that we now together understand that our salvation lies in each other, and we join arms again like we did on beaches in Normandy, in the civil rights movement, in the suffrage movement, that we join arms again and say to this world, watch us world, because together we will rise. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you like this content, please consider subscribing. Thank you for watching.